Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today I'm here to consider the question, are EA forgiven for Battlefront? Now yes, this is a very strong, almost harsh statement that implies I think Battlefront is a total failure. However, this is absolutely not true. I actually really enjoy Battlefront and have put many hours into playing it, so this video is more about looking at what EA have actually improved since the game originally came out. Now, there are certain things they have definitely addressed, there are some things they say are going to improve, and there are some things that they just haven't mentioned. There's no sign of them improving anytime soon. Also, just to make things easier to explain, whenever I say EA have added a feature or should add a feature or just refer to EA in general, throughout this video I'm essentially rolling EA the publisher and DICE the developer into one. So let's begin with the good stuff. What have EA improved and addressed about Battlefront? So one of the first complaints I had about the game was the fact that there wasn't much content, to be honest. You went through the map rotation very quickly and there just wasn't a lot to be getting your teeth into. However, now with the release of two massive DLC maps for free in the form of Survivors of Endor and Twilight, as well as the paid DLC, there's actually quite a lot to be getting on with now. So if you're someone who's just come into playing the game, you'll actually find yourself with a fair amount of variety. There are more heroes, more weapons and more maps. And the thing is, if you actually take a look at how many maps there are the large maps, there are the smaller maps, and then the air squadron maps. Together, there's actually quite a lot of content here. Another issue the game began with was the lack of single player content. There was survival mode and there were battles and there were the missions for training, but there wasn't really much to be getting on with, at least on a larger scale. But now EA have introduced skirmish mode where you can play Fighter Squadron and Walker Assault in single player or with a co-op partner, which is fantastic actually because it allows you to do a training session, I guess you could say, before you jump into the harsh world of multiplayer where everyone's doing trick shots. It's a good way of learning the map before you're forced to go straight in online, and it's something that I really would have appreciated at the beginning of all this. However, there's still no narrative, no campaign to be found, despite the fact that was a feature in Battlefront 2. You've also got new guns and star cards and abilities, and that increases the overall complexity of the combat. A fair criticism of Battlefront is that the fighting isn't the most complex, but at least by adding these new elements, there's a little bit more dynamism to the overall feel of it. I mean, just a star card like, for example, Overheat introduces an entirely new dynamic to combat in close quarters. It's something that's a rather unique power where you instantly overheat weapons around you, and if you're the one who's been targeted by that, it can put you in a situation where you're forced to think on your feet very quickly. I think perhaps one of the most significant complaints, or at least requests from EA, is to introduce space battles into the game, and if you look at the newest trailer for Death Star DLC that's coming out, I believe in September, you'll notice that space battles are going to be a thing. I mean, how can you have Death Star as a DLC and not have a space battle? The extent to which this will be like the original Battlefront 2 space battles is a little uncertain, because I think some people are expecting it to be capital ship fights where you can board one and blow it up from the inside. If they do this, I'll be very happy, but I'm a little skeptical as to whether it will be anything more really than Fighter Squadron in space. I mean, that will be great, and in some ways I don't understand why they haven't done that sooner. You just have to make a black skybox with stars to do this, but it's good that it's coming up and it's something that's been heavily requested. However, there are some things that EA still have not addressed, and I don't think they're ever going to address them, to be honest. And so let's go back to that idea of a single player narrative, a campaign. Now, there are three ways of looking at its lack of a presence in the most recent Battlefront. First of all, you could argue as to why it's not there. Okay, this is a multiplayer focused game, perhaps a single player campaign would just feel tacked on. But then again, Battlefront 2 had a campaign, and this is taking the Battlefront name, so there is this expectation that if you're going to keep going on with the series, that it will inherit many of its best features. And then there is perhaps the most controversial point of all. the price. As much as I do love and enjoy the game, I have to acknowledge it is a very expensive product, especially when you consider it is mostly focused on multiplayer. When you factor in the base game and the DLC with the Season Pass, which I think you need to buy in order to really appreciate Battlefront, this is a very expensive game. EA can really only address this in two ways. The first is a basic permanent price drop, but EA being EA, I don't see this happening in the immediate future. The other way is to add a lot more free content. So while I can see that EA have made a good effort adding new free DLC into the game since its release, there still isn't quite enough to justify the price of the base product. Now, I think they need to add just a little bit more, maybe more maps, more game modes, maybe more heroes for free, because at the moment it's just on the precipice. They're getting better, but it's not quite there. They are asking for a lot of money, and they really need to show value. And so now that I've given you my thoughts, it would be interesting for me to pose a question back to you. Do you enjoy Battlefront? Are you content with the current state of the game? Or do you think it could still do with a fair amount of improvement? Let me know in the comments below. As always people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.